I'm ready when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Oh,
that was my name. Good morning, everyone.
morning.
I am just so glad that you all braved that traffic to join us here today. And I'm going to make sure that the meeting moves as efficiently as we most possibly can. I am Councilmember Deborah Fix Sanders, the Vice Chair of the CoC Executive Committee, and I welcome you today. I want to make sure that we have our introductions. Since we don't have a whole lot of people here today, I think I'm going to start on my left and ask if you would please introduce yourself really quick.
Elise Mencop, Pinellas County Housing Authority.
Good morning, April Lott, Directions for Living, Vice Chair of Providers Council, Secretary for the CoC.
Sherry Holtzbacher with the Homeless Leadership Alliance.
Gary Small, board member and LEAT chairman.
Carol Twitter, of the City of Largo Housing Division and Vice Chair of Hunters Council.
Awesome. Kat Bird, VA Homeless Program Coordinator.
Zach H, represent Sheriff Belterry for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
Sam Picard, the Chair of Data and System Performance.
And our HLA staff, you're a part of the team.
Megan Robinson, I'm CoC Planning Specialist with HLA.
Thank you so much.
People online as well as other HLA staff.
Do you guys want to introduce yourselves really quickly online so we'll know who we have?
Michael Gelazzo, Perk, Providers Council.
Good morning, everyone. Kevin Maroon, Boley Centers and Chair of the Providers Council.
Good morning, Ashley Lowry, HEP, and I'm on my way there, so I'll see you soon.
Good morning, Kathleen Beckman, Chair of the CoC Executive Committee and Board. Good morning.
Good morning, Janine Evoli with the Juvenile Welfare Board, CoC Board Member. Good morning.
Good morning, Kimberly Rogers, Chair of the HLA.
Good morning, Teresa Jones, CoC Board Member.
Good morning, Esther Matthews, CoC Board Member.
Good morning, Sandra Newsom, Carrefour Supportive Housing and CoC Board Member.
Mike?
Is that everybody?
Oh, Mike?
Go ahead, Michael, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay, well, since that we
Are you talking about me? I thought I did introduce myself. Michael
No,
Gelazzo.
sorry. The other Michael is also online with us.
Yes.
There you go. You want to introduce yourself, Michael?
Yes. Mike, I'm co-chair of the LEAC and on the CoC board.
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Payton, Pro Bono Counsel for the CoC Board.
And then I guess, hi, everybody. Victoria Kelly. I am the Senior Manager of Advancement and Strategy with the HLA. And we also have Cynthia Kazowicz with the HLA online with us. Cindy, if you want to introduce yourself, you're welcome to, but I also know you're at home recovering right now as well. And then we also have Victoria Saylor, our Director of Finance online from the HLA as well. And then, of course, Dr. Freeman Gerhardt, who will be talking to us about the point in time count just shortly.
Thank you so much for those introductions. Zoom is popular this morning. It is popular this morning. So again, we want to welcome everyone here and thank you so much for spending this time with us. So next on the agenda is our overview of the CoC mission and priority populations. And it's very important for us to review what our purpose really is. And I don't know if you all have it in front of you, but our mission for the Pinellas CoC is the mission of the Pinellas Continuum of Care is to coordinate all community partners, systems, and resources available with the goal of helping individuals and families to prevent, divert, and end homelessness in Pinellas County. That is a powerful statement for us to absorb and to definitely collaborate to work toward. The 2024 to 2025 POC priority populations and interventions is the households with the following: vulnerabilities and/or risk factors for life-threatening health conditions and accessibility conditions, for severe and persistent mental illness or substance use disorders, for domestic violence within the past 3 years, risk of harm and exploitation, and the length of time of home. Also, our priority populations is disproportionately represented minority groups, veterans, families with children, older adults 62 and older, chronically homeless households, and youth ages 18 to 24. And our priority interventions to invest in securing and maintaining emergency shelters, invest in rapid rehousing wraparound services, and to set long-term goals for permanent supportive housing capacity, as well as prevention. So I think everyone should have a copy of those, that it wouldn't hurt to go back and reflect as we try to continue the services of CoC. So now we have special recognitions that our own Ms. Shirley is going to present.
Oh, yes. So actually, Kathleen, are you on and able to speak?
Yes, I am. I am on. I didn't, yeah. Yes, I am on and I'm able to speak. So wanted to take a moment today to recognize the leadership of our Lived Experience Advisory Committee. It's we have 3 leaders. We have Gary Small, Michael Crichton, and Kat McNeil. Correct? Do I ever name her? I have my notes here. Yeah. McMillan, sorry, and Kat McMillan. And they have been doing a phenomenal job in organizing and running the Lived Experience Advisory Committee meetings, inviting guest speakers, and really growing the attendance at those meetings. And one thing that stood out was their development and advocacy for the best practices for the homeless population pamphlet. And Gary, with some help from others in that committee who have vehicles, are able to drive them around, actually spoke with a member of law enforcement throughout our county. And you know, we have 24 municipalities and the sheriff's department, just for feedback, nothing official, but just to get a feel for it. And he said the response was overwhelmingly positive. So that kind of spurred these 3 certificates, as well as my attending a number of the LEAK meetings. I know April Lott attended a very well-run, informative LEAK meeting as well. So I don't know if April or Gary want to take, just 1 minute or so to say anything about that, but I just wanted to express my sincere appreciation for their work and cheer them on as they continue that good work. Not about you, without you. Oh, and one thing I will say too is I have urged them to invite members of our board of directors, so that would include any one of you, to their meetings to talk directly to people who are experiencing homelessness or have recently experienced it, about what your role is in our county and how you touch their population, and how we can better work together.
In my era, Kathleen Beckman is the chair that could not be with us today. So I'm sorry, Kathleen, I should have acknowledged you at the beginning of the meeting because you worked so hard for the CoC. And I need to make sure that everyone knows that you are the chair and you are here. So, Ms. Sherry, you ready for your presentation?
Yes. Mr. Gary Small, this is on behalf of the Pinellas CoC, a certificate for your service.
All right.
For Kat and Mike as well, and we'll make sure to have those to you at the next league committee.
Yeah, as for the feedback from the law enforcement, and every single law enforcement agency in Pinellas County was able to chime in on it. And they're very excited, very pleased, agree with everything on our law enforcement interaction pamphlet. Most of them were excited to when we're going to put it out there. How are we going to put it out there? How soon is this going to happen? So yeah, we had absolute 100% positive feedback from them. They agreed with everything on it. I still have several emails from Clearwater's Police Department, St. Pete Police Department, and others. But I figured the best way to get them to comment on it without accountability, because there are certain guidelines they can't cross, being a county or city employee, that go in there and get their opinion anonymously, just to get their opinion on it, look it over, sit and talk with them, get their feedback on it. And yeah, we have overwhelming 100% approval rate, as far as I've been told by them. So other than that, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now we're going to go on and move to our, well, it has roll call attendance when we've done the introduction. So we're gonna move right past that and move on down to our consent agenda, which is an action item. And the consent agenda includes the meeting attendance and minutes from the March 7th CoC board meeting, resources for interaction with law enforcement pamphlet. And we've already done our special recognition. So I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. All righty, we're gonna move on now to our presentation, and I'm gonna call on Ms. Victoria Kelly, if she would, to do the presentation for the introduction of our 2025 point in time report.
Absolutely. Before we move on to that, I just want to make sure that everybody online has a chance to vote for the consent agenda, if that's okay.
Thank you.
I even have a pink slip right here to remind me.
I'm so sorry. Can
That's okay.
Can we get the votes for the consent agenda? Thank you.
Yes, everyone online, the reaction should have a yes or a no button. If you want to utilize that for voting purposes, please do. If you abstain, please write abstain.
And then I'm also taking note of the ayes and yeses in the chat as well.
Victoria,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
can we clarify exactly how we online should be voting? Do you want us to raise our hands? Do you want us to type in the chat? I think there needs to be a point of clarification so we know how to respond when there's a vote.
Absolutely. Megan, would you like to answer that?
Yes, in the reactions part of the bottom of the Zoom, you see reactions. You should see a yes and a no button. You can react. Please use those buttons to vote. And if you abstain, please write abstain in the chat.
Megan, I'm okay. So you're saying on mine, I don't see a yes or a no. I see a green check,
yes,
or a red X.
Red X.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so do you all need a second to vote for the consent?
We are just missing a couple still.
Okay, so we have the majority. We're just still waiting on two. Okay, we'll keep it moving until we get those votes. But I want to go ahead, Ms. Victoria, if you would, so we can move on to our presentation of our point in time report.
Absolutely. So as you all know, we have the point in time count event in January, as we do every year. And just like in years past, we are currently working on our Pinellas point in time report. We have hired an analyst and author who will once again be Dr. Freeman Gerhardt, who authored the 2023 and 2024 Pinellas point in time reports as well. Dr. Gerhardt graduated from USF. And so he is very local to our area, has been very involved in social services and substance use treatment efforts here in Pinellas County and over in Hillsborough County. and has been an active member of the Pinellas CoC for the last couple of years. Dr. Gerhardt is both a member of the Point in Time Planning Committee and attended all of our meetings this year, and is an active member of the CoC's Data and System Performance Committee. So we are very excited to have him serving once again as the Pinellas Point in Time Report analyst and author. And I would like to turn the floor over to Dr. Gerhardt to introduce his process just a little bit.
Thanks, Victoria. That was a great introduction. Makes me feel a lot more important than I am, I think. So thank you. But yeah, I just wanted to reintroduce myself to the group. I know that the past couple years, it seems to be a pretty long process and drawn out process, and I wanted to kind of give a heads up that we expect it to be somewhat similar, especially with some of the federal changes that have been going on. I don't really have a formal presentation for you guys today, but I really just wanted to use this as an opportunity to explain kind of what HLA does, what I do, and then ask questions and set up a time for all of us to or maybe a select group to maybe meet, and instead of just listening to the presentation and reading my report, actually kind of get to more involved from the beginning. I think that really is something that may help the process out a lot. So basically where we're at now with the report is we're still waiting on HUD to open up as of last Friday. So I anticipate that hasn't changed. We're still waiting for Housing and Urban Development to open their site to actually submit the data. So I've been able to review some of the data beforehand, but there may be some flags that HUD provides once they actually open the site to submit the data. There also we may expect some potential issues related to how we classify genders, as well as race. And so we're currently waiting on some of the guidance from the state and HUD along with those categories. But overall, the same as the last couple of years, the point in time count evaluation will be a pretty lengthy report and break down all of the different categories. I really do a deep dive into the data to try to find patterns and identify any gaps. And that's where I develop a set of recommendations at the end of the report. And these are just recommendations to consider when developing strategic plans or working within the community. And really, I try to make them applicable so they could help kind of the lead agency facilitate a more comprehensive strategic plan. So with kind of that very, very general process, I really wanted to ask you guys, and maybe we don't have to answer all of these questions now given the time constraints, but I'd like to open it up to the group and ask, what would you guys like to see, or what would you like to see more of in the report?
And before we answer that, I do want to let you know, I'm going to share my screen right now. We do have time for a little bit of feedback right now, but we also have a form that board members are invited to fill out if you have feedback to share after this as well. So I'll put that QR code and that link up right now so you all can see it. And then I'll go back off mute so you can continue on.
Everyone have the opportunity to look at the PIT report?
The 2025 point in time report won't be available until this summer. So this is requesting feedback on the process for creating that report based on years past and whatnot. And I do see that Miss Teresa Jones has her hand up.
Hold on, Miss Jones. So Victoria, so the PIT report presentation that we received from the August 2nd board meeting that we were encouraged here in the agenda to review, how does that take place with what we're discussing now?
So we will still have that presentation once the 2025 report is available. This is an opportunity for board members to be more involved in the crafting of that report so that we can maybe get ahead of some of the questions that come up during the presentation, and we can have a more well-rounded report that is, quite frankly, hopefully more usable for the folks in the room. That's really the goal.
Mhm.
So I just wanted clarity on that because it said that it was recommended for us to watch it. So I just wanted to clarify that. Now I know Ms. Jones had her hand up and April also would like to comment. Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions, well, a question and a comment. The question is to Mr. Gerhardt related to his comment about waiting for feedback from or clarification about how to handle he mentioned classifications related to sexual orientation and to race. And I wanted to see if he could elaborate about what he means about how to classify race. I mean, race is pretty straightforward. So could you clarify that? And then I have a comment.
Yeah, so gender and race would be the categories given some of the changes at the state and federal government and the recommendations by them. So this may be a question for HLA to hop in on, but it is going to be something we're waiting for guidance on how to actually classify it. If you recall, 2 years ago, the PIT had standard gender and race categories, and then they changed last year into a subset of about a dozen different categories. So we're just waiting on how to determine what race and gender categories to use to classify.
Thank you. And my comment is that when Dr. Gerhardt made his presentation at the August 2nd meeting regarding the 2024 PIT report, we gave quite a bit of feedback during that presentation and some specific categories and things that we thought should be changed. I hope that you've taken note of those and have taken that into consideration as you prepare the 2025 report. Do you recall that there was a lot of feedback during that meeting?
Yeah, and those comments were addressed in that report for the 2024 PIT report, and certainly I'm going to keep those comments into consideration. Especially, one of the biggest comments was defining youth and parenting youth households, things of that nature. So having clear definitions, but those were addressed. All those comments in the prior report, and will continue to be addressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to, basically Teresa covered the feedback and whatnot from the last presentation. I think my input is that I agree that we should have more board participation, perhaps in a small group, that kind of thing. But the reports have been beautifully written and extremely informative. I do hope that we will avoid what happened last August, which is that we could not vote, if you remember correctly. That made the media, made the news. I mean, it was not a good reflection, a good representation of the work. So I do hope that we avoid those types of snafus forward. I do think maybe meeting in advance of a presentation would allow feedback prior to the presentation so that we could avoid that kind of tension or whatever it was that we weren't then able to approve it in the room, that then it made the media, that whole thing. I am glad to hear that the HLA in particular, but that you yourself are paying attention to the changes that are happening at the federal and state level so that we don't inadvertently get side in some kind of, right, because I do have a lot of fears, might be too strong of a word, but concerns about getting sideways, inadvertently getting sideways, because we haven't kept pace with whatever these changes are that are coming at us fast and furious. I know that's true in my own agency. So I do look forward to the full report, because the 2025 report, I think it will give us, perhaps, you said you're looking at it a little bit, and you can see that, there's still some similarities from years prior. I do wonder if we will have some analysis on, for example, the no camping bill, just some of the things that we were concerned about. We had hurricanes. If you remember correctly, the point time was delayed as a result, and or at least the vote to do it was delayed, right? But just if we will see any new analysis, and I would just encourage you to, as you review the data, that you are keeping those things in mind, because we are very interested to see if there are any trends or any data points coming in the 2025 report from no camping bill and hurricanes and some of the stuff that we were experiencing at the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your kind words. And yes, the process last year, the report was completed, a couple months before that meeting. There's just delays in, I guess, organizing the meeting. So that's why one of the biggest thing HLA and I have pushed for is to actually work with you guys beforehand to get more of your involvement to avoid all of that. So I want to be very proactive with that. And I think that link has like a scheduling option or something to where we could all meet. But yes, you bring up really great analytical points. And that is something that we're actively looking at right now. One of the ways we're looking at measuring some of the anti-camping bills is kind of unconventional. And so I'm excited to look at it, which is counting the number of people who provided identifying information, social security numbers, names this year compared to last year, and seeing if there's a change due to the political climate. Also looking at the hurricanes and all of that, terrible damage that happened. Probably comparing that to similar COCs to look to see proportional differences as an analytic strategy. But overall, and I could talk for hours about this. I know it's a quick meeting, but the rough numbers for this year's count, it's something to consider. So I did want to mention the unsheltered. So just looking at the unsheltered last year was about 721 people. Looking at the data so far, it's about 538, which is on the surface great news, but actually a little concerning, I think, because that is a pretty big drop. So we're actually I'm doing a pretty deep dive into potential reasons why that could be, and potentially also including some qualitative information from people's lived experience. So there's another strategy I'm considering, but I did want to mention that as a point of consideration for the group.
So that we can keep the meeting going. I see 3 more hands up. I don't know who was up first. Ms. Jones, is yours up again, or is it still up from the last question?
It's up again.
Okay, I don't know who was first, Kathleen or Miss Newsom? Sandra? Miss Sandra, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
I will. I think Kathleen was first, but if Kathleen wants me to go first, I will.
It's all in. Whoever.
Go ahead, Sandra. Go
Okay.
ahead, Sandra.
So I'm going to take a deeper look at last year. So my comments are future forward, not looking at 2024, because I'm new to the CoC board. But I did want to follow up on Teresa's comments about the changes that we anticipate coming from HUD. I understand they're scrubbing the language. They're going to make some substantial changes on anything that reflects anything that's perceived as DEI, and that would be for the HUD website. I think it's really important, and and I'm only making this recommendation that for the CoC's purposes, that we maintain those categories, because I hope someday things will change, and I think it's important. Data matters, and race has had a substantial impact on funding and the way we look at the work we do within the continuum of cares, as well as gender. And I think it would be a loss to lose that data because HUD's not allowing us to submit. So if it's possible to keep a secondary report that still adheres to the mission and value of the CoC, it might not make it in the HUD website because they don't want it, but we should want it. So that would be one recommendation. And I'll hold off. I'm going to look forward to seeing the 2024 report. I do think the numbers are across the state are reflecting significant drops in the homeless count. not just because most of them were done during a very cold night, so people went into temporary shelters. But there's also the issue revolving ICE, people being afraid to specify that they may or may not be documented, so they did not respond to questions, nor did they even participate in the count. As the same with people who were afraid of going to jail. And I think that that should also be documented so we can understand what's happening to, people in our community that are living on the streets and are in fear. And I would hate to think we would lose that information with the perception that homelessness has gone down.
Thanks so much for that. That was interesting and it makes sense. Thank you so much. Ms. Kathleen.
Thank you. I echo all the previous speakers about this agenda item for sure. To me, it's a little bit confusing on how you're going to classify race and gender. I mean, it is what it is. It's not like you can, I don't know how you're going to cut it up and divide it into different categories or call it something different. But the point I wanted to make is, and Teresa referenced it in April, the last meeting that we had about the Pitt report and gave extensive feedback that I believe Dr. Gerhardt referenced. If with a small group moving forward to really look at what we want to see in our Pitt report, if we could have a bulleted list of the concerns that were brought up at that meeting and then how they've been addressed, or hopefully we'll see that they have been addressed. That's all. Thank
you. Ms. Jones.
My hand was raised because there's been references to having a small group look at the 2025 Pitt report prior to the presentation to the full board. So my question is, how is that committee going to be established? Are people just to volunteer? Is the chair going to appoint folks? I'm just wondering who that small group is going to be.
I think we wouldn't turn anybody down.
An invitation.
Yeah.
It's an invitation. So if anyone has any questions or wants to provide input, there will be other opportunities as well, especially when Dr. Gerhardt was talking about going to people with lived experience due to qualitative. I would imagine going to the league, of course, there would be a session there. But this is really for anyone who may have questions. It's also to explore, and when reading a report like that, the Pitt report's not a requirement. This is something that is special about Pinellas CoC. It's very special. We get a lot of great feedback. Hillsborough, I was there the other day and they're like, you have an amazing Pitt report. It's beautiful. So I want you to know, like, this is not a typical thing. This is an additional. It actually does fulfill that gap analysis when you really look at it, at least a good part of it, And so this is an opportunity when reading that type of data. If you're not into the data, if you're not deep into the data geekdom that some people are, or definitions that make up data, making sure that we understand common language. Dr. Gerhardt is offering an opportunity to meet with him and to get some input, insight into what we want, and also to understand better, so that when it does come time for it to be revealed or reported on, presented, that people can all be on the same page.
So there's a question in the chat that says, what determines the invitation? I think it's vital to ensure that it's widely chosen. And that came from Esther Matthews. The question was, what determines the invitation to participate in the small?
If I can, Madam Chair, and forgive me, I was typing only because I'm not feeling the best, so my throat is a little weird. But when I heard it's by invitation, I want to make sure that whoever is invited to this group, that it is a transparent invitation, because I have seen, and I don't think it's intentional, that many things are happening, and it is groups that are chosen to come together, and I don't know that it's broadly reached out to the greater body to say, do you have an interest in this? So when I hear invitation, I hear we're going to decide who we're going to invite, and then that will be the invitation only group. So just ensuring that it's transparent, open, and that it's not our normal selectees.
Invitation, I believe that the QR code, reaching out, there will be more, I believe, follow up, so that there will be, an invitation for anyone on this body to be able to meet with Dr. Gerhardt.
I would
Yeah,
encourage,
there.
I would encourage that it is a, that it is a formal invitation, not a QR code that I'm sitting here looking at right now, a formal invitation that goes out to the full membership and certainly to the full CoC board to Esther's point, and that it's not one-off meetings. I mean, if people need private meetings, okay, fair enough, but right, that they're not one-off meetings, but that people have the opportunity to gather together, and because it's a more robust discussion about things, right? I do also just want to point out that while we are waiting for HUD, it all makes sense, but once it's opened, right, that the information that's contained in the report is rather time sensitive to the point that was made earlier about strategic planning. So it is not the HLA strategic plan, just to correct language. It is the CoC's strategic plan. And so getting that information and the analysis of the data as timely as we can without being too rushed, so we don't have the experience that we had last year is important. But people have to understand that the timing of getting the analysis is pretty important to the development of the CoC's strategic priorities, priority populations, funding priorities, all the things that we use that information for.
So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and close that agenda item. Everybody, hearts are clear, questions asked, we're good with that one. So now we're gonna move on to our priority interventions, and we're going to be updated with that with the Providers Council Chair, Kevin Monroe. Kevin? We don't hear you. I see your lips moving, but we can't hear you.
Hold on, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now we can, yes.
Okay.
Because I have noted here, per the executive committee meeting on March 7th, 2025, the word prevention was erroneously removed from the priority interventions, and its addition needs the CoC board's ratification.
That is correct. So during our executive committee meeting, we caught that oversight, and we're bringing it forward with adding the prevention intervention priority back to the priority population interventions, and it's brought here for ratification.
So hearing that is an action item. If anyone has any questions, we'll entertain those at this time. If not, I'll accept a motion to Kevin's request, or actually the executive committee's request.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Do we have our online votes yet?
You're coming in.
Coming in, okay. So while we're having our votes on that item, we're gonna go ahead and move on with our HMIS governing documents. And we are going to invite Ms. Imani Smith from HLA. Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Imani Smith. I'm the manager of HMIS and System Administration. I've included in the packet today, and also make a thank you, the HMIS policies and procedures packet, which does include the HMIS policies and procedures, the security plan, the privacy plan, and finally, the data quality plan. It has gone for review and feedback to Providers and Funders Council. It also went through data and system performance as well. So we're here for approval. Thank you.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Did you have the opportunity to review the documents in question?
Imani, can you just, or Sam or somebody, can you just give us a tad of highlights? It's a lot of material. It is a lot of material. And for people who are not HMIS users and in that system often, I would just appreciate for the benefit of all that we're giving a highlight of what the changes are that you're recommending.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, April. So yes, apologies about the density of our documents. For our HMIS policies and procedures, we really wanted to focus on readability and more clarity and ease of use for the reader. We did tackle the training section and provided more clarity as far as where agency administrators, who are our liaisons between our member agency and our database, they're able to go and find our documents regarding training materials and a checklist, right? So that way they can stay on top of registering new users for HMIS credentials and training. We did also tackle language regarding subpoenas and law enforcement, just so that way we're ensuring, right, that any of our unhoused neighbors are protected, right, especially during through the relationship between law enforcement and our unhoused neighbors. In regards to our security plan, we did want to update the table in the original document. So instead of having a huge table, which was really hard to read, we decided to make more of a checklist document. So that way agency administrators wouldn't have too much trouble setting up their privacy and security settings for their database and what we call our database. We also updated the privacy plan just to again have a bit more clarity and readability for ease of use for the reader. We wanted to make it clear, right, that our unhoused neighbors' information is protected, not just, you know, on a mandated level through HUD, but also because HMIS, as the HMIS lead, right, and as being a part of this CoC and the agency, we want to make sure that we are giving our clients agency, right, and doing all that we can to keep their information confidential and safe. There haven't been any updates to our data quality plan, but we of course always welcome feedback throughout the year for the next cycle. Thank you.
Yeah, so just again, for the purpose of the group is to say that HMIS is a pain point often for individuals being served and data being entered into systems, and they often don't want that, right? And so some of the privacy protection and those kinds of things have to be firmly understood by the people who are entering data and collecting data. So not necessarily those of us in this room, although we should be certainly aware of how we are protecting information, because it is a barrier, it's a pain point for many people. We've already talked about that at a point in time. It's one that we have to continue to, and many years ago, right, we had a whole snafu with public records requests and people wanting to get data and how HMIS data is available or not available to law enforcement, who also have street outreach teams, who are also, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think with some of the stuff that's coming down federally and stuff coming down at the state level, we do need to be sensitive to the fact that there could be requests to access our data, and what our data is providing, I think is, I just think is important. So I appreciate the changes. I appreciate what's in the packet in terms of the changes, the meaningful changes for those who aren't actually entering into HMIS. But I do just always want to underscore how important this is to the overall effectiveness of our system.
And I would just, I'd like to thank HLA staff, especially Imani, for making this review process pretty painless for the committee. As April noted, it's a lot to go through on the committee level and for the board, of course. So the summary documents throughout on each of the documents that show the changes from prior to this make a pretty easy reference. In most cases, to Imani's point, they really are about user friendliness and clarity, especially around training, to your point, April. Security, privacy, very important. And so making that training clearer and the certification process for new users, as well as making it more clear what the escalation process is when there's a problem, things like that. Thanks.
We are using the data predominantly at an aggregate level, but when we are talking to unhoused individuals, we are collecting it at a disaggregated level. And so being able to discuss that and talk about that with individuals is important. Yes, I need your actual name, birth date, zip code. However, when we are looking at it, nobody is looking at your name, birth date, and zip code, right? Like, it's those kinds of things that I just think are important. The other thing that I'll mention, which is not a part necessarily of this, but just as a provider, I do just want to say that I would appreciate if we could look at moving forward, if we could look at that in HMIS, that funding sources are not programs. They are not programs, they are not projects. And so we are often being required, in fact, to set up a funding source as a project. There are problems with that. I want it on the record that I'm telling everybody out loud that there are problems with that. It's not for today, but I need us looking at, I'm happy to attend whatever meeting where this gets discussed to go into why it is rife with problems. But currently, in order to enter data into our HMIS system with a new funding source, I have to set the funding source up as a project. Funding sources are not projects. They are not programs. They fund services.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, April. I will say on the record that that is not a requirement for HMIS. We do definitely, encourage for some projects, right? If they want to have specific, reporting, that is an option, right? To help streamline their reporting and make certain things separated. We do have what's called fund manager. So that way you don't have to put the funding source in your, project name or enrollment name or things like that. Instead, you're able to add it through a service transaction. If you don't want to add it through a service transaction, you're able to also add it through a private case note. So I'm definitely happy to pick your brain a little bit more, April, about that process and see how HMIS can support any DFL projects regarding that. Because I definitely want your reporting to be easy, but definitely don't want to, inconvenience you all with that portion as well.
I would make a motion to approve the changes coming out of HMIS governing.
To the second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Dissension? Hearing, was that say that again, was it for or against? I heard a response.
It was I.
Aye,
That's what-
gotcha.
yes, I have not.
Motion carries. There was a note in chat that I do want to make note that Michael actually made a suggestion on that topic where he suggests adding a note that data won't be shared with the feds regarding any database of homelessness like they want to do with the autism persons. And I think you all know about that legislation right now that's in effect. That was not a good thing. So anyway, that was his comment and I want to make sure to share that with the board. So now moving on to the governing document revisions, and Sherry is going to help me with this, but there are proposed amendments to add a statement to include the ability for electronic voting to approve action items. So the first change is on page 10 at the end of section 2, establishing the Pinellas Continuum of Care Board, subsection decision making. It states, the Roberts Rule of Order will be followed to open and close each meeting and to bring a motion to the floor. The Continuum of Care Board will strive to make decisions through modified consensus. And when consensus is not possible, decisions shall be made by a vote of the majority of voting members present.
We are suggesting, so the suggestion is that decisions may also be made by electronic methods, including but not limited to email. And as some of you know, we did a dry run, a practice on this with onboard voting. And so that's what we want to put out there.
Questions on that? Page 14. At the end of section 3, establishing the Pinellas Continuum of Care Committees, subsection decision-making, it states, if a committee recommendation requires a formal decision-making process, there is no proxy voting for continuum of care committees except as noted for general board meetings.
And for that, it would be the same to add you can participate in electronic voting.
Okay. And then the last one, in the last paragraph on page 13, updated to reflect the March 2025 CoC board vote indicating board members are encouraged to serve on a council or committee. Pinellas Continuum of Care Committee membership section states, the CoC chair will ensure that each board member through volunteerism and appointment shall serve on a Pinellas Continuum of Care council and or committee. I think that one's pretty much self-explanatory. Comments, recommendations, hearing none.
I would motion to approve the changes.
There a second? There a second, okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
We do have one opposition.
Okay,
Teresa Jones.
okay. Motion carries. Now we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next item.
Madam Chair, I think we missed the CoC system benchmarks, which is.
Hold on. I'm going by this agenda, let's see, hold on a second. You're on here, I'm just, you're here. Hold on.
I'm here like 5 times. I think.
You're to them.
So, okay.
You're coming. Yeah, you're here. You're here. That's right. Yeah, we're there. Okay. Let's keep going.
And then I'll be after as well.
Oh, yeah, you're good. So now we're gonna go ahead and move on to our MOU revisions. And that will be our CoC Secretary April Lott and our interim HLACO Sherry Postwater. Did I say that correct?
Yes.
Yay.
Okay.
So, quickly, we have had, I believe, 2 meetings that were held by, and facilitated by Duggan, Cooley, where we are, taking, one by one, the requirements and, expectations from the CoC to the HLA lead agency that are captured in a memorandum of understanding. We became aware that more clarity was needed in many actually of the requirements. And so we've been taking them one by one. We have had legal representation on behalf of the CoC present, also present today online. And we've made very significant progress. I would say we are close to having a document that will be signed and agreed upon and, brought back to the CoC for approval. Anything you want to say?
That sounds great. Yeah, Duggan has been wonderful in facilitating. I was able to attend one meeting where we did discuss the MOU. And I think it's been very helpful having the legal counsel there as well for both. It's representing the CoC. And I think that's going to move forward very well.
I will just say, just so everybody is clear, we are not negotiating the MOU. That is not what we were tasked with doing, and or making what I'm going to call meaningful changes to the requirements of our lead agency. Rather, we are offering clarity to what was already included in the MOU. The second thing would take a very different, probably group of people, maybe even, and certainly time allocation and that kind of thing. So the task that we were tasked with is providing clarification to the current MOU. We are not making meaningful changes to what is required of our lead agency. Kathleen, do you want to say anything
Yeah, I was
to
gonna
that
ask.
process?
Kathleen, do you want?
The process, it's been going well. And we have we've had 2 meetings where there's been a lot of discussion and talking about nuance of the language and beginning to clarify. And we now have a document that has captured those discussions, one document MOU, because both the HLA and the COC took a deep dive into the MOU. Now we have an interim kind of beginning to clarify the MOU, and we've narrowed our group down to a smaller number to really hammer this out with our legal representation, which we have Greg Payton on the line, who's one of the attorneys, and Murray Silverstein is the other, who we appreciate greatly. So I expect the progress to move quickly and at our next meeting, if not before, which speaks to our need for the previous agenda item to allow for electronic voting. If we want to ratify this MOU or from the board, we can just call a special online meeting and get that done quickly with electronic voting. But all good. I concur with what April has said. This is not a rewriting of it. It's a clarification and tightening of it.
Thank you. Sounds good. Yes. So moving on, we're gonna now have our data systems performance charter revisited, and that would be our data systems performance chair, Mr. Sam Carter.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, board. We have, we're made some minor changes to the data and system performance committee charter. Most of that was to align with the broader CoC charter so that we're in alignment. We made some changes in terms of aligning the seats, making sure that was correct. We actually, ironically, did not have provision to run a meeting without the chair, so we fixed that. So that if the chair is not there, the vice chair would chair the meeting, which makes sense. It wasn't the case. So all pretty minor changes, and would love your approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? It carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
I
Carter.
do think that we have to go back to the system benchmarks.
It's 109 in the meeting book.
I don't know. Sorry about that, Sam. It's
No
my
problem at all.
fault. If you would like to go ahead and talk about the CoC system benchmarks.
Great, thank you very much. So these benchmarks we have looked at pretty extensively. The data and system performance recognize that some of these benchmarks are challenging, are ongoing. Most of them really come from HUD, so we don't have a ton of room to mess with them. And I think the ones that give us the most difficulty perpetually are the ones around income. And while I'm open to other thinking about that, some of it is required. And certainly in projects that our clients are going to leave at some point, income is essential to ongoing stability. So it is something that we need to measure and address. The other thing that we wanted to put before you is the idea of keeping these benchmarks the same for 2 years. If we change them every year, they aren't really useful benchmarks. So we would ask your approval for the benchmarks before you for 2 years. So that would go through, I guess we approved these last year. We're approving them, so I'd like to keep them for the next 2 years so we can watch our progress and consistency.
Anyone have any questions in regards to the system benchmarks and Mr. Picard's report and request?
Motion to approve.
Having it been properly motioned and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We'll give a minute for our online voting.
I think there was a question, or I think Teresa had a question, her hand up? Maybe not. Teresa's hand's down. No, sorry.
Well, I did have my hand up, but I mean, we're moving quite swiftly here. My hand was raised because I wanted to ask about these benchmarks in terms of we see what the targets are. I'm not certain that how we're to interpret whether is the target set by HUD or we set the target, and then how do we do a comparison of where we are in terms of reaching that target? I don't know if I'm the only one that didn't understand this report. I reviewed it before the meeting and had that question.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate the question. So the things that we're looking at are set by HUD. The numbers, the targets we get to set. And we typically set them by looking at our performance. So we try to set a goal that's an improvement of where we are now, but not an unrealistic expectation for our providers. When we move a little bit later in the data presentation, we'll look at our performance against some of these benchmarks or against, those are the system performance measures, but they match some of this in terms of last year versus this year. When we set these benchmarks, we do look at our performance from the last year to set these.
Thanks, Sam.
Please do share.
That was great. There's one more thing. So when Sam's talking about, we are competing against ourselves. So during the NOFO process, or when we're going for federal funding, what HUD is looking for is that we are showing improvement. If it's 1%, that's great. And so the reason why we have these is to strive towards that so that we can continue getting all the points and show improvement. And also because it's the right thing to do, of course, to be striving for all of these. But that is the technical answer to where those come from, is that those will actually get us over that for HUD, make us look good.
I believe that was Sherry that was speaking. Just a comment. I know in past years, we used to have charts, pie charts, etc., graphics, I should say, that showed the comparison. Just simply looking at the charts, I feel like I'm missing being able to look at the data in a different sense. And those of us who have been involved with the CoC for many years, I think you recall we used to have graphics that went along with this data. So I don't know if that's possible or if anyone else has any interest in it, but it certainly helped me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Monty wants to speak, but I think, Teresa, I think we do still have those charts. I think what's before you is the measures that we are approving that will remain in effect for the next 2 years. It is not the data that you're asking for right now, which I do believe still exists, and I think we're going to see some of that in a minute. Is that what you wanted to say, Mike? Yes, okay, so it's kind of two different things, Teresa.
Okay.
Yeah, what you're looking at right now is just being able to approve the benchmarks with the targets as listed there for the next 2 years. And then we'll be able to see the comparison that you're talking about in future reports.
Thank you, April.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Like grammatical type change on the percentage of data element errors for TH and rapid rehousing says 1% should be equal to or less than. So it doesn't look like we're aiming for 1% error. I don't know if anything else like that appears, but it's on page.
Oh,
Page
111. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Call
so
the question, Madam Chair.
So did you get that, Sam?
So we're looking at I think this is true for a couple of them potentially, but where just showing that what the benchmark is, that's a maximum,
right?
Not, okay.
Yes.
That's fair. Thank you very much.
Okay, did everybody online hear that clarification?
Yes.
Okay. You had an additional question?
No.
Mr. Jones? Okay, so you're good on that, Sam?
Great.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much.
I will say, Sam, I do think that it's a bit of a heavy lift and a stretch, and I'm hoping that some of this or all of this the thing that I get concerned about us approving many of these things at this level, right, is then where it goes from here, right? So this has to get to providers. This has to get to boots on the ground people. This has to get to Lieutenant Haish's people, right? Because when we look at, for example, the one that gives me the most heartburn on the list is the emergency shelter. So the percentage of individuals exit from emergency shelter projects with the reason for leaving is unknown. Right. 10%. Right? I'm assuming what we're saying there, right, is that we will have no more than 10% of individuals who are exiting emergency shelter with an unknown category.
Right.
And we've been at like, I don't know, 40, 50, 80, whatever. We've had like, the number is obnoxious, right? And I understand why it's a pain point and why we want to get to 10%. But 10% feels unrealistic to me.
So if I'm correct on this, I believe that the unknown is counterintuitively separate from unknown. So you can have, so unknown as an exit destination includes several things that we don't want to choose very often. But what is outside of that 10% goal is like the no exit interview completed. So for people who leave a project, this is especially to your point, the case in emergency shelter, a lot of our clients leave without saying where they're going. We don't know where they're going, but the answer to that question is no exit interview completed. That is still a very high number, but that doesn't ding the provider with the unknown. So, and this is if you're confused, it's totally fair that you're confused. I don't use HMIS myself, so I always feel a little bit sheepish on this kind of thing, but those are separate questions. We looked at that benchmark very carefully in terms of what we, to your point, striving for the best data we have and realizing that some things are not fixed. So that 10% doesn't include the biggest exit.
Gotcha.
Which is no exit interview data. That's
Gotcha.
still allowed.
And there's also a comment by, it says Javoli, and I want to know if this isn't pertaining to the discussion now. It says, I would also like to see the multi-year data / graphics comparisons.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll look at the system performance measures a little bit later in this meeting. We're also looking, and I think part of the planning with HLA overall is how we use our meeting time. We definitely do want to be presenting data regularly in a way that's meaningful. We've worked on that as a committee. Certainly HLA staff has been a huge help with that. And so we'll get back to doing that on a more regular cadence like we're all used to doing.
Thank you.
Actually, on the board, but just kind of couple questions or suggestions. So on the benchmark, so I'm kind of on the user reporter side of things, just some clarifications. For example, I think it was kind of April's point for actually the other points. If it says no less than or at least, like for example, are we aiming for only 20% of people to increase their income, or is it at least 50%? So just adding that, or no more than if it's something we're trying to get like recidivism and so forth. And then it's still confused, like with the street outreach one, 70% individuals in street outreach projects will exit any place other than homelessness, but shelter is still homelessness.
Yeah, so what's interesting, and that's set by HUD, and there's a logic to it. So it's confusing on the face of it, because in every other service type, we want people to be exiting to a permanent housing destination. Street outreach is a conduit to everything. So the assumption that somebody being engaged by street outreach is living on the street or in a car, and if the street outreach worker is successful in their engagement, getting that person to go to an emergency shelter is a successful outcome because it's a step up from being unsheltered homeless. So it is the only project where exit to emergency shelter is a positive exit, and that's why it's for them.
So on that note, maybe for the 2025 benchmarks, thinking about having a column that says which report, which question on the report the data comes from, to make sure that we are on information or programs the same way.
Yeah, and I think that's page 3 of the benchmark report. It has a note at the bottom that talks about the data sources. We have,
I don't think I have that version.
okay,
I've just got, it does have.
gotcha, okay. Yeah, we definitely have worked on being more clear so that folks are reporting from the same place and we know where the data is coming from.
Okay.
That's absolutely, that's a great point, Aaron, thank you.
Great, thanks, conversation. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to commend Sam for his responses to those inquiries. Because that's somebody who sat on the data system performance committee for like 8 years and then has to try to explain these exact scenarios to cops who are the supervisors of Safe Harbor. Fantastic, because I was sitting here ready to back you up on all your explanations. Very well said. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Sam, he's a rock star. Yeah.
Well, it's only because we have a committee that's got people who actually know how to use the stuff and can explain it to me 15 times.
That's good.
I do want to point out that the, on the prior page, right, where it's talking about overview of system performance measures. I do just want to point out that again, when we approve things like priority populations, priority funding interventions, they then lead to and flow into the system performance measures, which then flows into, right, our benchmarks. I just always want to make sure that people understand kind of the tapestry thread that and why it's important, because when we have a measure, for example, to reduce the overall number of people experiencing homelessness by strengthening prevention, diversion, rapid rehousing strategies, that starts with priority populations and funding interventions, which then also goes to our funding unit, our municipalities who are investing in and are paying attention to what we've approved, and then it gets into a goal. I just think it's important that we all understand how it works together.
Right.
Sounds good. Thank you. So now we're gonna go ahead and move on
Do we need to
to,
take a vote
I thought we already did it for the benchmark.
for the benchmarks? There was a motion to approve and there was a second.
We voted, yeah.
Did we vote? Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna move to the review and rank work group, and that is you again, Mr. Carter.
Okay, fantastic. So we've been talking about this at data and system performance and at our board meetings for quite a long time. Part of this is that the ranking review process had some hiccups last year through that we all probably remember. I'd say even before that, participating in the ranking review process always felt like there were some things that weren't as ideal as they should be in terms of the provider experience and as a continuum of care experience. So the recommendation from data and system performance is to make a work group to look at the ranking review process before we do the ranking review process, so that we can all feel confident that the process for evaluating proposals for funding, which is one of the main ways that a lot of our providers deliver their services, is fair, is as painless as possible while being rigorous and supports the quality of care and the quality of data in the whole system. So that's our proposal. What we'd like to do that, the work group ideally would look at a revised and aligned scoring tool, not just for the HUD and OPO, but also for Department of Children and Families, Emergency Solutions Grant funding, Challenge Grant, and other state funded services. Some of that comes in the same process, but as we saw 6 months ago, some of that comes with random grant release opportunities from DCF. And if we have a process that's ready to go, when something like that drops, the HLA can make an announcement and have a process that everybody already feels good about that fits with the other processes. And so that when we do rank and review, if there are projects that we would love to fund, but we don't have money for, we'll know it's in the hopper, it's a great project and it's ready to go. So if somebody comes with private money and says, we'd like to give the CoC $4 million, we can say, this is a vetted project that we all feel good about. So we'd like to appoint that work group. The work group would consist of HLA staff, HMIS representation, somebody from the Data and System Performance Committee, a funder, someone with lived experience, and a provider. There's a question for the group here about whether that provider should be an advisory only capacity or a voting member of that committee, and then thinking through how we mitigate any potential conflicts of interest with that. I think that's always been a challenge in that process that I think has been an ongoing conversation.
So before, I'm sure if you want to answer that, we have a hand raised. Ms. Sandra, you have a question?
Good morning. Yes, thank you. I just a quick question. Are you thinking about like a universal application done at the same time so that it's just available when other funding sources come in, or continuing to issue RFAs as they come?
At the moment, RFAs are issued as they come from DCF, which could come about at any moment. And so the goal would be to have, for everyone involved and to be able to efficiently disperse funds, have a one-time deal once a year with universal application and have everything reviewed and ranked so that projects are ready to go. And it doesn't mean that funds will come around, but at least we will have projects. They will have already been vetted and ready also for local funders as well.
Thank you. I do recommend it because it alleviates any concerns of like, I think it was at the last meeting where there was a discussion about some funding that came up, and I think it went along the way of if it was a universal application, but I think it does speak to transparency in the process.
So the question here is, this is a possible action item. It was a referral to us to consider that. And I don't know if Sam, if you were looking for us to vote on that today, if that would be.
I think that would be wise.
That would be, okay, so that would be the request of by April.
So I do just want to say to Sandra's question, though, that, and for the benefit of the entire group, the universal application process was started 3 years ago. We did it very successfully for 1 year, and then due to transition of leadership at the HLA, it fell off. So what we are talking about here is bringing back, right, the work that was done 3 years ago to make that happen. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Sandra, and with what is coming out of this rank and review, this out of data and system performance from Sam and that committee. So I would make a motion that we establish a work group. Is this a one-time work group or is this an ongoing work group?
This would be a one-time work group. It would finish its work ideally in 2 to 3 months, and so that we can have a process fully in place before this next thing. I think to the question, April, I'd be open to having a permanent work group, but I think probably it would make more sense to do it this time, and then we need to do a revision to appoint another task force later on.
Okay, so my motion then is to approve a time-limited work group for the purposes outlined by Sam. I would suggest in my motion that there are at least 2 providers. One provider that does not receive funding, at least HUD funding, so that there isn't an idea of potential conflict of interest that does get a vote. But I would include a HUD provider, perhaps that does not get a vote but gets to participate in the discussion because the information that they would provide is meaningful. And so with that, that is and the rest of the identified people to be included, I agree with, and so that is my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions?
Kevin, do you have anything?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay.
No, I'm good with the plan. It would probably have to carry on to those applying or receiving DCF funding as well.
Sounds good. So it's been motioned and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We'll give a second for our online voting. Like motion carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Picard, for that.
Thank you very much, board. Good work.
So now we're gonna move on to our CAP progress, I'm sorry. And joining us, to provide that is Ms. April Lott.
I want to say that I believe everybody here has received the emails that Kathleen has been sending out routinely to provide an overall update of the CAP. We have successfully, I should say, the HLA, predominantly under the leadership of their interim CEO, Sherry, has completed and fulfilled the obligations under the CAP. And so what I'm bringing forward is a request to sunset the corrective action plan. It has been satisfied at this point. As a point of record or a point of clarification, I will say that if future issues arise, we can always revisit another corrective action plan if that would be needed. Currently, it does not appear to be needed, and in fact, we've successfully navigated, I should say, Sherry and team have successfully navigated the corrective action plan. So my request to the group is to take action on sunsetting the current corrective action plan.
Kathleen, did you want to join in and provide comment?
Thank you. I'll just be brief. I'm glad my connection is good here. I'm in the middle of the woods in California, so it's my internet is stable. Every once in a while I get a couple of messages, but the communication has improved exponentially between CoC leadership and HLA leadership. They've made great progress, and yeah, I mean, I've sent out very detailed weekly emails about the progress being made. All the timetables have been met and on time, and it just makes sense to sunset it. It's no longer necessary. And so I agree with April. If there are future problems with anyone going on, this is always an option. It wasn't a pleasant option to take, but it was incredibly effective, and we're on the right track.
I concur, Kevin. I didn't know if you wanted to comment on this as well, since you were very active in the process.
I think everyone has summarized it all very well. I'm glad that we are finally at this point. It was a very difficult, challenging time, but I look forward to the move forward and our progress working together.
Good, and I'm also going to concur. This has been a complete beneficial activity. I agree. It was a hard one, but it was necessary. And Sherry, you have really stepped up and changed the entire environment, that we were really working in. And it looks now it's going to be a favorable relationship, and I look forward to what we have to offer working together. So I agree with April on sunsetting it, and I am so glad that we are at this place right now, because I'm gonna tell you, 30 days ago, we weren't here. And I am just so honored that we were able to come to a conclusion of having a positive collaboration moving forward. So the sunset has been motioned. Did we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
We'll wait on the online. No abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you so much. This has been a journey well worth it, and I really do applaud all of you that had something to get into us to this point.
Can I say here, excuse me, Madam Chair, is that by taking the action that we've just taken today, it will then therefore allow the HLA to move forward with posting the job and beginning the recruitment process for the, I hesitate to use the word permanent, but for the permanent CEO for the HLA. So it was important that we took this action today, and I appreciate all the work that's been done.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're moving on to data presentation again, performed by Mr. Picard.
All right.
Your day.
think we've got a presentation on the screen. Thank you so much. Okay. So one of the things that we get directly from HUD is our system performance measures. Today, we're going to look at, so those are set. We don't get to choose them, but we do get to evaluate how we're doing with them. Today, we're going to look at comparing fiscal year 2023 to 2024. The report is already presented, submitted to HUD, so we're taking a look at what we can learn from this. One thing that we've all seen, there are a lot of acronyms. We're all constantly learning those. There are two main things that we look at in terms of data on, there are three main things that we look at in terms of data for our homeless system of care. One is the system performance measures. Those are really looking at the system as a whole, not client specific, although to your point, April, it obviously comes from client specific data that then is aggregated. And this looks at how the system as a whole performs. One of the other major things that we also that our HMIS team just submitted is called the LSA, the Longitudinal System Analysis. That looks at more about the system flow rather than the system performance. So today we're looking at system performance measures, SPM. This is how we look at how effective our system is at reducing homelessness and promoting housing sustainability. And so we're not looking at individual programs, we're looking at the system as a whole. Let's take a look at slide 1. Okay, right. So 2021, great. Let's keep going. So these metrics I said earlier that they're HUD mandated and they look at system effectiveness as a whole. And the idea is that we use this to see where some of our challenges as a system might be, where we need to focus additional investment and additional effort. Okay, let's go one more for this. Great. So the length of time homeless is, we look at this in a couple of different ways. In the darker blue here is 2023. The lighter blue is 2024. So we're looking at year-over-year progress. And we're looking at both. So if you think back to the statistics classes or math classes that you had, when we talk about average, we mean two different things. Average means the mean. That's you take all of the numbers and you divide them by the total. And median means you list all the numbers and you pick the one in the middle. So they're both ways of talking about the average of a population. Mean or average gets pulled more by outlying data. So if you have somebody in emergency shelter who's there for 4 years, that's going to have a significant impact on the mean. It isn't going to have a significant impact on the median. So the median data speaks better about what the middle of the data looks like. The mean talks about how the whole data set looks like. So when we look at the average length of time homeless, we know that folks are homeless for a long time in our system of care. A lot of that is because we don't have a lot of affordable housing for people to move out to. So, but it does speak to the need for us to develop more affordable housing and to get people through as quickly as possible. And we can see that both in median and mean, our time homeless is increased from year to year. Looking at our returns.
Hey, Sam,
Yeah,
so we're gonna go through the data, but are you
Yeah.
gonna give any, like, I don't know, anecdotal, which I'm sure for a data person is not wise, but like what that's telling us, like, so people are staying homeless longer,
Right.
is what
Yeah,
data
that's
is telling us. Do we think that people are staying homeless longer? Is there a feels like reason that is occurring? There's more people entering the system, there's less housing inventory overall, predominantly because of hurricanes. Is
Right.
there, I mean, is there something that we can Or are you not giving us that today? You're just giving us the facts.
It's a great question. I think we don't have a firm conclusion on that, but it definitely feels like there's less housing inventory. I think all of us who work with anybody who's trying to rent a place knows that the prices are really high. So finding that is really difficult. That's keeping people homeless a long time. And I'd say the thing that worries me, and that isn't new at all, is that, to your earlier point, a lot of our exits are to unknown destination. So when we talk about length of time homeless, maybe the picture is actually worse than even the data shows us, because a lot of the people who exit our system aren't exiting homelessness. But I think to your point, housing inventory continues to be a huge issue. And I think, what I'm excited about getting back on track with is some of our processes like Built for Zero because I think the solution to a lot of this is getting deeper into individual human lives and helping to solve the problems that they're facing so that we can get individuals unhoused. We talk about the data in the aggregate, but where we solve it is one-on-one with excellent case management, excellent care coordination, excellent programs developing care for individual units. There.
Along that line too, I know we've had discussions about increasing the number of people that are seniors that are becoming homeless.
I can't hear you, Errol.
Sorry, I know we've had discussions in other meetings about the increase in our seniors becoming homeless that are on fixed income, and it's really hard to change that income level. So I don't know if that also potentially plays into that factor if we're seeing an increase in those that are on fixed income, like what I mentioned, but not much ability to increase that income.
I didn't hear a word you said at me, and I'm sorry.
So Arrow's asking if we're seeing an increase in people on fixed incomes, particularly seniors, and where that's impacting the data. When we look at the age data, I'd say most of the time we see an increase in the age of people who are homeless. I'll say fixed income is tough because the advantage with our senior population is that many of them have an income that they qualify for, whereas some of our younger folks may not have that. So it's not a fixed income, but it's an absent income, and both of those things are challenging for sure. And I think that's going to take some real creativity to solve. Yeah.
So I would offer a counterpoint to what Sam said regarding people exiting back into homelessness. I talk to people and we talk to people, and when they show back up after 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, a year, a lot of them do go back to family, and they just don't want to go back to the shelter that they were at because they found somewhere else to go. They saved up 3 paychecks and they were able to rent a room or something. And then they show back up a year later, 9 months later, whatever it is, and they're like, no, I was here, I was okay. And the last thing we want to do is go back in and disrupt the data that's been in there for years, so that when it's re-pulled, somebody's looking at it, why is this all? So if there is ever a funding opportunity, and I think this was being explored a few years ago before COVID, for follow-up type, not even case management, but just, hey, you exited the system, where did you go? Are you okay now? Do you need a referral to a different shelter? Do you need services? What can we do in the community to help you? I think that would really help skew a lot of the data that shows as negative. Because the people that I talk to, a lot of them are very resilient. They rely on places like Safe Harbor and also Safe Days to get back somewhere when the chips fall off the table again. And I think there's way more positive exits out there than our data shows. And I just think that if that funding opportunity ever became available for some sort of follow-up case, and I think we could really have a positive impact.
Yeah, because it sounds to me like what Lieutenant Hayes is saying is that they are very resilient and they are resolving their homelessness situation by either the examples that Lieutenant Hayes just gave us. But what hasn't been solved is housing stability. That's long-term housing stability, right? And so 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, to use Lieutenant Hayes' numbers, right? A year goes by and we're back where we were, where they were, but we aren't giving them credit for the year, 6 months, 8 months, not whatever, that they were gone, right? Where they were resilient and making things work for them, and now they're back where it appears they're back where they were before, but they're not getting credit for that time away. And I do think that would be, because I think it gives us a different narrative, a different picture of the people that we are, again, the system that is trying to be designed to help those individuals. It's housing stability as opposed to homelessness necessarily that we're not able maybe to see or get to. Because I would agree, we see that in rapid rehousing, right? We see it in so many of our housing interventions.
Right. So Sam, how many more slides do you have after?
Just a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, there is a question online.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Teresa Jones.
Hold on. Yes, Ms. Jones, I'm sorry, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just sitting here thinking that some of the interventions that for housing to increase housing availability that some of the governments have put in place, such as the city of St. Pete and changing their land use plans to increase density and allow for auxiliary dwelling units and things of that nature, doesn't seem to be making a dent in the reduction of homelessness. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Sam.
Okay, thanks. So looking at returns to homelessness, unfortunately, this is one where we are seeing some increase in returns versus last year. And particularly, we're seeing returns in less than 6 months from exiting to a permanent housing. So I think that speaks to what we were talking about, the need for a greater investment in housing stability, post-exit support, things like that, that are hard to do. Looking at the number of people who are experiencing homelessness, we're seeing, to the earlier point about the PIT count, seeing numbers go down is a good thing on the surface, but sometimes it means people are hiding more effectively. And, you know, I'm the data chair, but we always have to take our data with a large grain of salt, because there's a lot that we've improved our data quality. There's a lot we still don't know, and we can only count what we see. So I think sometimes reducing the people who are experiencing homelessness, we have to be really thorough with how we're doing that. We see more use of Safe Haven. That's actually increased capacity, but Safe Haven is a targeted intervention for folks who are struggling with disabilities as well as mental health and substance use disorder. And those programs are actually very effective at transitioning people into permanent supportive housing. We saw a decrease in sheltered and sheltered homelessness. So we're seeing more utilization of shelter. We look at income growth. We continue to struggle with this. This is a difficult one. And I think, I'm sorry, we're 2 more slides on. Sorry, Megan. So we continue to struggle with income growth. There are some opportunities there for sure. I'm just going to skip that next slide, the first time homelessness. It's a weird data piece. And then I'll just look at the housing placement and retention. We often are, folks who are providing frontline services do a great job getting people into housing. We don't have enough rapid rehousing in the system, and we need to keep working on how to keep people stably housed once they're placed. If we're thinking about our system strengths, we do have high permanent housing retention. Once people are placed, we do a good job keeping them there. We have decreased first-time homelessness, and we've improved permanent housing from street outreach. What we know we need to work on is countering the rise in unsheltered homelessness. To your point, April, the storms haven't helped us there at all. So we've got a lot of work to do there, and continuing to strengthen post-exit support.
Just something to throw out there is with regard to the street outreach, there's a lot more data system now with the start of the sheriff's office. Well, reintegration of the sheriff's office, whatever you want to call it, social street outreach teams. They're having good results with getting people placed within 7 days of interactions. I just think that's important to take into account. There's a lot more street knowledge data in the system than there was last year at this point.
That's exactly right. It's exciting.
I will say the street outreach as well, that kind of the opposite of what Lieutenant Hayes is saying is that, you know, with our street outreach staff, that they've been very intentional to not begin conversations of, we got to get you off the street into safe harbor or to a shelter in the early discussions. For us, our data is, so we might be skewing the data in the other direction, because what we were finding is that people, and the data is clear, that we would, you know, pick somebody up, let's just say, right? And we transport them to wherever we're transporting them to. Safe Harbor, St. Vincent de Paul, wherever. And within 2 days, they're right back where we picked them up from. So it was kind of this, you know, they weren't ready. Let's just say they weren't ready. And so they would agree to do it for whatever reason, no doubt an incentive of some kind. And then they would end up right back. And so it felt like what I'm gonna call an exercise in futility. And it's like, you know, maybe we just leave you sit right here. And what we do instead is use engagement strategies that are gonna be built over time, and elements of trust, which are gonna be built over time, that we meet you where you are and that we try to resolve your immediate need, whatever that is, wound care, food, you know, clothing, whatever it is. And instead of, what we're trying to do is move you, because it was an exercise in futility.
So we adapted kind of a similar strategy, because what we were seeing is people would get engaged and then they wouldn't want to come right away, which is, we get that. But what we were seeing is they were coming like within 7 days. They didn't, if they were being engaged with a group of their buddies, 2 or 3 or 4 of them on a corner somewhere, they didn't want their buddies to know they were soft and were ready to go to a shelter. So what we started tracking is how many people showed up within 7 days of that encounter. And because we would, like, our outreach workers would see them and be like, hey, I talked to him a few days ago, and then they'd go talk to him, so you came, good. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to let my guard down in front of my boys, so I came a few days later. So we're seeing, we're not immediately like, get in the car, let's go. We're putting it out there just so that they're ready, so we're ready to meet them there.
With that being said, thank you so much for that, Mr. Card. Once again, wonderful presentation and great dialogue. It is always good to have this opportunity to share. So now we're going to move on to our work group updates, and Ms. Sherry is going to provide that. And after the work group update, she's going to move right into the lead agency updates as well. Yes, Ms. Sherry.
Okay, we're almost there. So work group updates, we have the funders and providers council, joint councils, as requested that we review the emergency shelter written standards, which should be done anyway. They were overdue a review. And that committee, that work group meeting met twice, had everyone, the funders and providers there, as well as a person with lived experience. And we are in the final stages of doing the final edits, and it'll be ready. Very time limited. Next, landlord retention work group. So we had HLA staff facilitate that as well, and that was in response to a request by Funders Council. Arrow actually requested it. She's not here right now to be excited about the outcomes of that, but you can look in your packet for some of the recommendations. There's no action that needs to be taken around any of that. It's really going to go back to funders to talk about feedback that we received through surveys and discussion on what would entice more landlords to get involved, take Section 8, be part of our housing systems. And also a presentation on the Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund was also provided by our Alex Strider from the HLA. And then finally, the strategic planning work group. Right now, I'll be speaking, of course, with the executive committee right after this on a more detailed plan, but the idea right now is it is time for us to go through a strategic planning process for the COC. Over the years, various people, depends who you talk to, they'll call it a consolidated plan, which that is something else. They'll call it a strategic plan, or goodness, there's been several implementation plans, all of these different plans. What HUD requires is that we have a COC plan, and that's what we submit in July to DCF. And that COC plan basically is not prescriptive. It does not require that a strategy be in there. It requires that we talk about priority interventions, priority populations that was informed by data, and that this is our plan, this is our focus, and that's where we then focus where we put funds. But to have a strategic plan, to have an idea of what are we going to do over the next few years, and who's going to be responsible for it, and how are we going to track it, and not just, you know, sit somewhere in a long report. Nice logic model, visual, and some actual attainable goals would be helpful. So going to put together, Sam, I'm thinking about the story I've heard about how long it took to get the performance benchmarks. 14 months, right, for a work group. Okay. And we don't want to take 14 months to create a strategic plan and then do it again the following year. So looking at a rolling strategic plan where a small group, 6 to 8 would be ideal, representative folks get together. There would be input available from, would be provided across the board. All the committees would be able to provide input, the general membership definitely would have opportunities for that. But we do want to have those regular checkpoints every quarter and then annually do a review of it to see what needs to be tweaked, because we know that the landscape is changing often. And so going to put out there, you'll be receiving an offer, an invitation. If you would like to volunteer to be part of that work group, we will receive those. But ultimately, HLA staff, we're going to make a recommendation to the executive committee on what looks like this is good representation. We don't want it to be lopsided one way or the other. And to have 20 or 30 people in the meeting to come up with this would be quite a bit. So there will definitely, thank you. There will definitely be the looks of horror. There will definitely be, like I said, lots of opportunities for input along the way. And of course, the board would be approving it at the end or not.
Kathleen, did you want to contribute to that? You have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm getting a message about low bandwidth here, so I hope I'm not cutting out. Sometimes I'll cut out a little bit, but you know, that strategic plan in Sherry and my discussion about it, we do need to be very thoughtful about it, but ultimately I would hope it would be we develop a usable one-pager that's easy to understand, that we can circulate throughout the community, and it'll be a living kind of a document. And it ties in with our gap analysis as well to see where our needs are. And one thing that I made note of with Sam's last presentation with his slides is he kind of went over the slide of first-time homelessness, which I think is, you know, my gut tells me it's a significant, or it's going to continue to be more significant group of people that we're dealing with. I mean, I have friends who are on the cusp of facing homelessness because of condo assessments, and they're on a fixed income and all those other things that happen. So, I'm just a little concerned we didn't talk about that slide, but that's okay. I know that the data is complex and the stories are nuanced, but it all ties into our strategic plan and where we want to focus. So that's all. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the work groups that are going on right now. We'll be reporting back mostly to funders, and then it'll all come back here as well at Funders and Providers Council. Lead agency updates. We had, many of you have seen the news, you received the reports that our CoC program had NOFO awards. We were awarded $6,582,610 for the CoC. That was a little over almost $434,000 increase from last year and over $1 million. It was like $1.1 million more than awarded the previous year. So all renewal projects received award letters, as well as the one that straddled into tier 2. So we received some tier 2 funds. And just something to note is that HUD directly contracts with the providers. So it doesn't go through the HLA. That is a direct contract. And so right now what we have is basically a conditional award. There was some concern because of not really knowing, the landscape of the federal government. We don't know really what's going to happen the next day sometimes. And so what we are looking out for now is when you do receive those contracts, I will be in touch with you as soon as I know we're getting them. To make sure to review them, read through them very thoroughly. They may not look the same as they have in the past. And so that's something HLA will be here to support and make sure to keep an eye on as well and report back. But that's very good news. Very good news. And then for state funding, for 25-26 DCF, they're doing something different this year. And so I don't really know, they haven't landed on a precise formula for how they're going to fund the COCs with those unified state homelessness funding. And so, but we do anticipate having similar funds as before, we would hope. And so we're just going to move forward as if that's the case and make sure to have things aligned earlier in the state fiscal year. So that'd be July rather than later. And
real quick, Victoria put in the chat for everyone that's not online that the no forward information is also available at the PinellasCoc.org/funding if you want to access that. Thank you.
So challenge on shelter, that was addressed at our last board meeting, and HLA's executed subcontracts with Directions for Living and St. Vincent de Paul, split evenly half and half, and it's again very short turnaround on how those funds can be spent down, but there seems to be very good plans in place to get that done. So that's so helpful. And then.
Can I just say about the DCF about, state funding, as all of you, I'm assuming, know already, right, that there is not yet a budget. We did not sign die as intended today, right? I mean, it's uncertain. Sherry is being very diplomatic, and
yeah,
I want to encourage to be diplomatic as well. Will just say that I think it would be naive to not expect changes, although, I think we can hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And so if some of the changes don't happen in fiscal year 26, I would anticipate that they'll happen in fiscal year 27 for sure. But nonetheless, I do think it's important that we're paying attention to what's happening, not just federally, but at our state levels, and what is anticipated to be coming down. This could be significant to our system of care, and I just don't want us to just mow through this, because it could require, for example, an emergency board meeting. It could require a variety of things. What I think is going to happen is that at our state level, changes are going to be made, and when those changes which is reductions, what I mean is reductions in funding to the people that we care so much about. And when that happens, there will be an expectation, probably even words that will be used to say, these need to be solved at the local level. And so locally, then our local municipalities will then have to share more of the burden. By the way, I think that's what's going to happen at the federal level as well. We're going to give this back to the states.
Right.
And then the states are going to say, this is at the local level. And so what our local municipalities will be expected to do is this much larger lift. As you know, if there is not money now to do those things, there will not be money, right, in 6 months from now to do those things. And in order for our local municipalities then to fund those things, they will have to make very hard decisions about what they are and are not funding. And I had a funder very recently say to me, listen, I do not want to be in a position where I'm deciding which kids get to eat right? This is how serious or how real it will become. All things won't be able to be funded at the local level. And so I do just think that we have to pay, these are not passing a budget at the state level is a warning shot over the bow, and we have to be paying attention to what that potentially means. In this case, for people who are living homeless and or unstably housed.
So Ms. Sandra, we see your hand up. Did you want to comment on this as well? You're muted.
Oh, good, sorry. Let me start over. I'm in 100% agreement with April. I think this is a big red flag, both from the state budget and the federal budgets. There, excuse me, there is some suspicion when the federal budget is released, there's going to be substantial changes on where HUD falls, which would impact our funding as well. So I think it's a big area of concern that we have to be mindful of and thinking about a proactive plan. The good thing is, hopefully, let's keep our fingers crossed that these contracts were awarded for 2 years versus the traditional 1 year. So I think that gives us maybe some grace, but I guess, so I support all of that, but I had a question regarding the NOFO. Excuse me, and now I'm losing my voice, but Cheryl, can you tell me, I was just looking at the link that Victoria sent, and of the award that you received, did you get new bonus projects or just?
No new bonus projects.
No new bonus, okay. And have you had an opportunity, or will there be an opportunity for some conversations with HUD? I know that I'm saying that with my eyes rolling in my head already, but to discuss the scoring in some of the areas that perhaps were needed improvement?
So this is a common thing that's been happening throughout Florida is one area that I want to point out, but also that, and we were actually, goodness, there was a concern that these awards would be made at all because of the timeline. And so, but we have not, I've been in touch with HUD field office and no information available. But we are looking for that scoring, our scores to come down so we can review them. We expect that that'll happen. We just received this report fairly recently though, so that can take a little bit of time.
But as you know, Sandra, I'm assuming you know, and everybody I hope in the room knows, is that HUD team members and staff, right, have already been eliminated. They no longer have positions. So people who were supervising and or overseeing, multiple, TA, technical assistants, advisors, and those kinds of things are now trying to do the work. And it's just, I anticipate, I think Sherry's being generous to say that it's likely to happen. It just hasn't happened yet. I'm not so sure that we're going to continue to have those kinds of opportunities, Sandra, and that if we do, it's going to be, the timing of them will be almost too late to make meaningful changes to whatever it is that we're doing. But staff has already been lost. They've already been eliminated, shut down. So.
No, absolutely. And I agree, just to add, I totally agree with that. And I think that this makes the prior conversations even more important about our outcomes and performance measures, because I think there is a need to really dissect that deeply so that I think getting a new bonus is going to help in some capacities. And again, I'm new to the CoC, but I'm involved with several others. And I know that these are the areas of where we look at just from a planning perspective, just to remain competitive, but also to increase the annual renewal amount. And I agree, April, we're not going to get anything from HUD this year. We're lucky we're getting the contracts. So
Well, yeah, we haven't received the contracts yet, too. I mean.
Right, right. Well, some of them are starting. I know that there were 5 counties in Florida that got delayed because of the hurricane. But in other COCs that did not have that extension, some of those contracts are already starting. I'm in some of the other COCs and I'm involved in, I'm starting to get contracts, which is exciting and relieving all at the same time, and sad because they are changing languages everywhere. But so that was just my question. I know that it's based on the past, and I'm hoping that in terms of being able to get some feedback from HUD on the scoring elements, just to help see where we want to focus on. And hopefully, Cheryl, I hope we can be as optimistic as you.
Well, so there, to what April was saying earlier, as of, looking at the budgets and where the Senate and the House were landing for the Florida legislature, when it came to funding, maintaining DCF staffing funds for lead agencies so that we have staff for the COC. When it comes to challenge funding, don't remember about challenge and shelter, but those two, like what the advocacy letter went out from the COC, those areas, both houses were in alignment. But then other issues have come up around taxation and where do you cut, and now they're not. So there's one that reconciliation phase, and of course today is the day that makes a big difference, right? And so leading up to this week is like, okay, it looks like it's going to go okay, and then something else comes up. And as far as the federal side goes, I don't need to go too deeply into that, although something that we are watching, of course, is a lot of the talk around COC programs to begin with, and then moving towards a block grant that goes out to the states. And so that's something that we need to keep an eye on and start looking at. If that was to happen, what would that look like? So that's another area too. Any other questions around any of that? Or areas to look into? Going from very hefty topics there to board engagement training, you all have on the front of your packets, or it will be sent out. There will be other methods of being able to respond. A COC board member communication preferences and orientation request. So this sheet has, we're just looking for your name. Megan would like to know how many people would like to have hard copies versus electronic only, so that we don't kill too many trees. And so if you could fill that out or let her know. And also if there's somebody else that you want to receive information, so if you have a staff member, an assistant, someone like that who does keep your schedule, that they can we can have their contact and then work through them. And then finally, orientation requests. The orientation materials have been added to the CoC website, but if you have not had an orientation or you want a refresher, please reach out. You can fill out this card. You could reach out directly to Megan or me, and we will make sure to make that happen. I will meet with you one-on-one and go through all of it. And if you need a refresher, we can also provide, of course, small group refreshers. Feel free to reach out. The invitation is open. But I do want to mention that those materials are on the CoC website, which has been recently updated. And for the CEO search, I believe April already spoke to that. That's all that needs to be said. We can move forward. The job description's been updated. The HLA board will be meeting later on this month to hash out the rest of the details for that search. And for upcoming opportunities, there is a membership meeting on June 13th at 5 p.m. at the St. Vincent de Paul. I'm sorry? May 13th. May 13th. Why did I write? That's why I get for typing my own notes. Membership meeting, May 13th. So coming up this month at St. Vincent de Paul Kitchen and Resource Center in Clearwater at 5 p.m. to 7:30 or 5:30 to 7. Is that right?
5:30 to 7:30.
Okay. And the reason why I said 5 is because we are trying, and we don't know yet, trying to get a tour, an optional tour put in there as well. Any questions?
Can you just remind us, I believe we took action recently around mandatory attendance for CoC board members. It's encouraged but not required, correct? And so that's not to discourage people from attending membership meetings, but I think it was an important change because of just the heavy lift of meeting attendance and requirements. But I look forward nonetheless to the membership meeting.
And she goes to all the meetings, yes. And then, so definitely encouraged to attend. And, well, if there are no other questions.
I thought Esther's hand was up. Esther, you took your hand back down. Did you have a question?
Did, but April kind of covered it. I was going to say, due to the many obligations I'm sure everyone has, but in particular, the days that the membership meetings are held are my NAACP meetings, so I will never be able to attend for that reason alone. So I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you, Esther. You're right. Busy people, as we say, booked and busy. So we do have multiple, and being a part of certain organizations require you to attend multiple meetings, and we do understand you can't attend them all, because I can't either. So, with that, thank you so much. All right, so we are at that point. Kathleen, are you still on?
I am, and I'm going to try to put my video back on, and hopefully somebody let me know if the audio is cutting out, and I can turn that video off. Oh, good.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I'm gonna
good.
let you call for action.
Okay, yes. So we have two open board positions. We have the healthcare seat that was vacated by Camille Henry, who was the CFO of HCA Florida Northside Hospital. And she relocated with HCA Healthcare to Fort Walton Beach. And so we absolutely appreciate and applaud her engagement with the CoC when she was here. But that healthcare seat is open. And so we need to have a healthcare professional apply and be voted in. And Sherry can talk a little bit about that process after I also mentioned that we also have a business seat open. And business is kind of a big overarching term there. It's not fully defined about business. I know we had a discussion in December or early January about who might fill a business seat. But I'm thinking, if we have someone with one of our chambers, that would be great, that they can represent more businesses at the table and variety of businesses. One person that I'm thinking about is former Pinellas County Commissioner Charlie Justice, who I believe is now the CEO or chair of the Beach Chamber. And so, he might be one. But if anyone here on the board has anyone in mind or recommendations, or you want to reach out to people that you think would do well on this board and help us do our work and have an important seat at the table, please get in touch with me or Sherry. I also wanted to take a minute to remind you that we still need a funders council chair. I have great appreciation for Arrow Woodard, who serves as co-chair of the Funders Council, but we've been without a Funders Council chair since Duggan Cooley, who is CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation, resigned a number of years ago. And like we officially changed the charter language today, it was the chair, my position, the CoC executive chair's position, to appoint or assign someone to fill a role. And as you all know, and we all mentioned how busy people are, there's no way I'm going to tell someone they need to take on a chair role and expect them to do, a good job if they really don't want to do that. So I currently co-chair the advocacy committee, and I'm chair of the CoC executive board, and attend as many meetings as I can, whether they're joint funders providers or the leak. And so I really can't function as a CoC or as the Funders Council chair. I'm not doing it justice, and someone needs to step up. So I wanted to make this call to action. So we have a healthcare seat, we have a business seat, and we have that Funders Council chair position. And I'll also note today, and not to be, a Debbie Downer, but somebody can correct me, but we don't have any elected officials at our board of directors meeting today, except for Council Member Deborah Figgs Sanders. Is that correct? And what we've done is we've allowed participation to be hybrid. We've removed the requirement that board members serve on a committee. And we've also, I believe we've reduced the requirement that board members need to attend, 2 of the general membership meetings. Sherry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we need full and robust engagement here. And as we've talked about different funding sources from either the state or the federal government impacting our CoC here in Pinellas County, we need those elected officials who control purse strings to be at these meetings. And they need to make full reports to their peers as well as their constituents about the work we're doing and about our priorities. And, we need to elevate the work of the CoC so we can gain even more support. I don't know if I'll turn it over to Sherry to talk about filling those positions and the procedure, but if anyone else, especially on the executive committee, wants to chime in on any of those things, feel free.
Well, pass her hand up, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, the chair of the Funders Council needs to represent an agency that is a funder, correct?
No, that is incorrect.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect.
So being the chair of the Funders Council, well, second question, chair of the Funders Council also requires that person to be appointed as a member of the board, like the chair of the Providers Council. Is that correct?
Maybe we let Sherry talk about the process that may answer your question.
Thank you.
No, I will have to defer to Victoria or Megan on that specific. Megan has been knee deep in the charters, and I don't want to put you too much on the hot seat.
And if I could follow up, the reason I asked the question about the chair being a representative of the funders of an agency that is a funder is because I had been approached about chairing the Funders Council. And I know when I was the city's manager for homeless and social services, my predecessor, Cliff Smith, had been the chair of the Funders Council, and it made sense to me because the city is obviously a funder. But when I was approached about serving as the chair, it did not make sense to me because I am here as a private citizen and not representing a funder. So that's why I posed the question in the manner that I did. So you'll know why I asked that question. Thank you.
Your question made perfect. When you asked it, what I will say is that previously, you are correct. The pattern had been that the chair was a funder. However, as you know, some funders have identified I'm going to call it, for lack of a better word, a conflict with serving in that seat, and that their own counsel, legal counsel, has advised against it for a variety of reasons. But when you look at the charter and other things, it does not actually require that you're a funder. What it requires, which is the reason you were approached, is a couple things. One, a grasp on how funding works, But two, to be able to facilitate and lead discussions relative to making those decisions and priorities within the funders council. And so you were approached because you do have a grasp on how funding works and how the CoC works and how priorities work. And you are one to use your voice to be able to facilitate meaningful discussion. So to answer your first question, that was that. I will say that we have taken up your second question as well, which is that when somebody serves as a chair, there seems to be a rather significant time commitment. So it's not only the chair, but then it becomes the CoC board meeting, and then it becomes the executive committee meeting. And so all of a sudden you go from one meeting to now multiple meetings, and that is a pretty big lift. I do not believe that we've actually taken action in charter yet. Although Victoria has her hand up, and so maybe that is incorrect, but it's trying to navigate or the balance of the voice of the chair of the Funders Council and the Providers Council at the at the next two meetings, right, which is the CoC board meeting and then the executive committee.
So Victoria, you want to contribute to that?
I just want to add, what April said is entirely right, of course, and no action has been taken in charter. I just wanted to add that we did reach out to the former CoC attorney, Mr. Charlie Gertis, for guidance around this matter, and we did ask if, for instance, the functionality or the duty to serve as a voting member of the CoC board could, for instance, be split between the Funders Council chair and vice chair, or if the Funders Council chair could have a non-voting seat on the CoC board. We also asked if the responsibility to serve on the board in the executive committee could be split between the Funders Council chair and vice chair. The guidance that we were given at the time, however, was that per charter, the Funders Council chair was expected to be a voting member of the CoC board and the CoC executive committee, that those could not be split between the vice chair and the chair, at least as currently written, and that the Funders Council chair had to hold the Funders Council chair seat and could not hold another seat, which is why, for instance, Ms. Minkoff so generously stepped into the role of Funders Council chair for a while, but then had to step out of it because that left nobody representing Pinellas County Housing Authority. So that is some of what has happened there, some of the legal guidance that we have been given so far. And I just wanted to make sure that that legal guidance was shared as well.
Yeah, sorry, last year I thought Kathleen announced that you were going to talk about the process of hiring that, so that's kind of why I did that. Ms. Jones, you have another question?
Well, just a comment, Madam Chair. I raised those two questions because I see with our online participants that there are at least two participants who are not a part of the board, but are observing and tend to be at each of our board meetings observing that represent funders. One is from Pinellas County, the other is from the city of St. Petersburg. And I would hope that since they are members of the organization, that they would consider possibly stepping up to chair the Funders Council without naming them. Thank you.
I like that. Thank you so much. Chair? Is that all the questions? Good? Because I think Kathleen said you were doing something about the open positions. Yeah, she just did. Oh, she did all of that? Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't overlook anything or anyone.
Oh, I want to mention though, of course, July 11th. So the next board meeting. The call to action here is typically it'd be the first Friday in July. It's been moved to July 11th, so the following week, which is still Friday, same time. Here's the deal. Historically, we have not had what my understanding is there's not been a quorum in July, so it ends up getting canceled. However, there are some changes that have been made. So we have hybrid meetings where people can vote this way as well and participate. It's not required to be in person. It's a difference that's recently taken place. So we're hoping for, because there's so much work to get done. You know, we wait till September, we talk about the pit report, we talk about strategic planning, all these other things. It holds up the process if we don't meet. And so strongly encourage, if you're able to attend virtually or in person, do your best. And what we're going to do on our side, so that everyone else can also know their calendars and what's going on, is that a few weeks before the meeting, Megan will send out the RSVP. We'll do a attendance RSVP deal and find out who will be attending. And if we will make forums, so we'll be able to give you good advance notice if we will or not. And the reason why we wait that long is because people will say yes right now, and then it changes later on down the road. So strongly encourage attendance.
Okay, public comment. Do we have anyone here from the public? Seeing none. Well, this has been awesome. It has been interesting. We've gotten quite a bit accomplished, and we are ahead of time according to the timing on my sheet. But again, I want to chime in with what Sherry said. It is very important, and I know we went through a difficult time, bad press, all of this going on, which may have impacted some of the participation, non-excitement. But we do want to continue to encourage. So I'm wondering if there's an action that we need to do to personally reach out to some of our board members, just to say you were missed, and we look forward to seeing you. Because I know really busy people, such as myself. If I did not have legislative aid, I would miss like half of my appointments. But it's someone being there to remind you and to encourage you, we have this meeting and your participation is really important. Can we expect to see you? I'm horrible with emails. So you can send 5,000 emails, I may get one. And so that may be other people's issue too, with not responding to certain emails. If you have like 5 email addresses like I do. So I'm wondering what we could do to kind of engage those that have over the past few months disengaged, because now I see us really working toward a really productive relationship. And I'm really excited with the changes that we've made to accommodate board members and to accommodate growth and to accommodate us moving forward. So with that being said, does anyone, I don't see any further hands up.
I have something I'm going to say under public comment.
Well, it's supposed to come out in April. Okay, but anyway, we're gonna go back, but what I wanted to make sure is, does anybody else have anything else before I allow April to go ahead and pretty much close us out? But I want to thank everybody for being here. Really, I really do want to thank everybody for, taking the time, because, it's gonna take effort on all of our parts to get this back to where we know it can be. And we want to support Sherry. And we want to support the HLA staff, because at the end of the day, it's our homeless who we are here to serve and not ourselves. And so I just want to thank you guys for being here. And I'm going to let April close it out with her public comment. And I'm going to give you back the rest of your day, except the executive committee. We have a meeting immediately following this, and we're not going to wait until 12 o'clock. We're going to start it immediately following this. So April, you're gonna go ahead and close this out with your comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was noted in the Providers Council, Funders Council meeting minutes that I was going to go to attend a LEAK committee meeting. I do just want to say that I did go do that, and it was an amazing, wonderful meeting. I appreciated them inviting me and allowing me to be in attendance and to present. The topic, if you will remember, is really just to try to get reconciliation between what we were hearing was happening relative to point in time counts and what the reality is with people with lived experience, and try to get some alignment there. And I will say that the feedback that I got from the Lived Experience Committee was very, very different than what we are hearing in other committee meetings. And so I would encourage people to attend a LEAK committee meeting and to really hear the voice and the perspective. It was also rather concerning to me that the LEAK committee was not fully aware of much of what is happening in other committee meetings. And so we were able to have a robust discussion. Gary told me at the beginning this morning before we started this meeting that, that they look forward to participation from other board members, including myself, to come back to the lead committee meetings. So I do just want to just say, I would encourage people to do that. They're very, they've got wonderful people who are chairing and vice chairing that committee, Gary being one of them. We recognized them in earlier today, but I just want to say it was a very productive meeting.
Like to, we didn't finish all the discussions we were looking, so they're still waiting for you to come back and do it better.
Well, with that being said, and no further comments. Oh, I'm sorry,
Ms.
Nate.
Jones, Ms. Jones has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I'm sorry, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to mention that I assume that the, I can't even, it used to be called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, changed its name. We haven't met for a few months, so I'm assuming that that committee may be defunct at this point because of what's happening on the national level. I don't know. I don't know that I haven't heard anything since we canceled the last meeting. So I don't know where that stands. If we want to even address that maybe at the July meeting, whether I mean, I've brought it up before, whether we should still have that committee or not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I'm gonna go ahead and put that down so maybe we can talk about that during the executive committee meeting as well. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sounds good. Thank you. We adjourn. Is Kathleen, are you staying on for the executive committee?
We're just gonna switch to Zoom room, so.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got time for it. Do I need to go into a different link or can I stay here?
Different link because of the recording.
Okay, I'll leave right now. Thanks. See you in a minute.
Start early so we can be done.